Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well. This is my second time trying to record this video and I really hope I don't have to do it a third time. So you guys should know the drill by now. I go through everything that I watched in the past month, this one being October, and I give my very brief thoughts on said films as we go along. Good? Good. Let's get straight into it. The first film that I watched in October was No Time to Die, the new James Bond film. I've already done a full length video talking about my thoughts on this film as well as the rest of the Daniel Craig era Bond films. So if you want to know my full in-depth thoughts on this film, then go and check out that video. The link to it will be somewhere up there. But my very brief thoughts that I'm going to give for this video is that I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a ton of fun, and I thought it was a really fitting send-off for Daniel Craig as this is his last Bond movie. Then I watched the Netflix film The Guilty, starring Jake Gyllenhaal. I am aware that this is a remake of a German film from a couple of years ago of the same name. I have not seen the German version, but I have been meaning to watch it since it came out. This version, on the other hand, considering this is the only one that I have to go off of, I thought was okay. It's a very serviceable thriller that is definitely strengthened by Jake Gyllenhaal's performance. And that's about all you can really say about this film. It doesn't go beyond what you expect it to be, and that's about it. The direction is also pretty decent by Anton Fuqua, but again, there isn't really much you can do in terms of direction and camera work with a concept like this, and that might be something that the German version excels in, but again, I have not seen that version, so I can't tell. But this version, I thought it was okay for what it is, but I'm not going to be in a hurry to rewatch it ever again. After that, I then watched Steven Soderbergh's new movie, No Sudden Move. I think this came out a couple of months ago in the States and then has only just found its way over to the UK. Again, I thought this film was pretty good. I don't think it's the best Steven Soderbergh film I've seen. But that being said, it has a lot of his trademarks and it has a lot of the elements that make up a very good Steven Soderbergh film, like stylish pacing, slick editing, really good performances, and a brilliant cast, I might as well add, that includes the like of Don Cheadle, Benicio del Toro. So yeah, overall, I think this movie is pretty good. I think it does kind of dip into a bit of a lull in the middle of the movie, but it picks up again towards the end. Yeah, it's just an okay film. Again, I don't think I'll be in a hurry to rewatch this film, especially compared to some other Steven Soderbergh films like Logan Lucky or any of the Ocean's films, which have a ton of rewatch value. This, on the other hand, though I did appreciate a lot of the aspects of it, and I think it is a very well made film, I I can't see myself in a hurry to want to revisit it anytime soon. After that, I then watched Boiling Point, Natural Light, Hit the Road, and Flee, all as part of the London Film Festival. Again, I've done a full length video talking about my thoughts on all four of these movies, so if you want to know my in depth thoughts on these films, check out the video which is linked somewhere up here. After that, I then watched the new Edgar Wright documentary, The Sparks Brothers. I was really intrigued about this film, not just because this is Edgar Wright's first ever feature length documentary, but also the fact that this is about one of his favourite bands of all time, Sparks, I thought was a very interesting thing to do a documentary on, and considering he is a massive fan of the band, I know he would do this band justice. And I already had a rough idea of who Sparks were before I was going into this documentary, because I know some of their songs like This Town Ain't Big Enough for the Both of Us and Girl from Germany. So I already had a rough idea of who they were, but I didn't have as much in depth knowledge as he does about the band. And I've got to say, I was really entertained by this documentary. I thought it was very, very interesting, and the amount of people that they interviewed for this film that are famous but are also fans of the band, I thought was really, really interesting, and getting their points of view, I thought was really interesting as well. This film has Edgar Wright's trademark visuals slapped all over it, and I feel like if it didn't have that, it wouldn't be nearly as interesting. And I think his visual flair for explaining stuff and telling stories really does help explain the career of Sparks, and I think also fits their quirky personality very well. There are also some uses of stop motion animation in this film, which I thought were very well implemented. Um, the only issue I had with this film is that it can drag a little bit, and considering the film is 2 hours 23 minutes long, you can kind of understand why it would drag in a few places. But again, I can completely understand why the film is as long as it is, because the film literally delves really deep into Sparks' career and dissects their career literally album by album. It starts with their very first from the 70s and then finishes on their most recent album. Then I decided to get into the Halloween mood by watching a few horror movies for the first time. The first of those being Wes Craven's Scream, which I absolutely enjoyed. I really, really liked this film. It's a lot funnier than I was initially expecting. I knew it was a little bit tongue in cheek, especially considering the key concept of the film and what it is aiming to go for. But I genuinely was not expecting it to be as funny as it was. I think the cast are all brilliant in this film, especially Matthew Lillard, who doesn't get a massive role in this film, but the moments that he is in it, he absolutely shines. There is especially this moment that is just a really small moment near the third act where he is given a few parts to kind of improvise, and considering the moment of the scene and what he delivers for that, that I think it's genuinely really well done. And those few lines that he has at the end are just ingrained in my brain. They're absolutely hilarious. I really liked how this film kind of took the core concepts and cliches of horror films and adapted them into this film in a way that makes it very self-aware. It can be a bit on the nose at times, but again, it kind of works. And another thing that I really appreciate about this film is that it feels real to an extent, even though there are certain choices with the editing and the score and the direction that do feel a little bit over the top at times. The actual premise, story, and characters feel very grounded and real. The people committing the murders are not like Michael Myers, where they survive God knows what. This feels like something that could actually happen, and I think that kind of adds to the experience a bit more, along with the characters being as realistic and grounded as they are. After that, I then watched John Carpenter's Halloween for the first time. It's not as scary as I was expecting it to be, but I still had a lot of fun with this film, and I do find a lot to appreciate about this film, especially considering the time it was released and how low budget this film was at the time, and what John Carpenter does with such limited resources in this film is genuinely mind blowing. Especially the opening scene, which is all done from a first person POV. It's probably one of the best uses of a point of view perspective I think I've ever seen in a film. Like I said, it's not as scary as I was expecting it to be, but it is still well made, and I can really. This is one of those films that I can appreciate more than I actually like it, especially when John Carpenter is at the helm. And yeah, it's a good film. It didn't exactly blow my mind, but considering what it set as the bar and template for slasher films at the time, and also the restrictions in which it was made, there is a lot to appreciate about this film, and I can clearly see that. Then I watched the Spanish found footage horror movie Wreck from 2007. I absolutely loved this thing purely because it's probably one of the most terrifying films I've ever seen. I've always had a soft spot for the found footage subgenre. I think it gets a little bit of a bad rap nowadays, but when the genre is done well, it is incredibly effective. And Wreck is probably one of the best found footage horror movies out there. It is so well done, and the fact that it is such a short runtime, I think it's only 73 minutes long, it really utilizes that short runtime in the best possible way, because from the moment it starts to the moment it finishes, it is just this intense, chaotic, fast paced thrill ride that does not let you go and genuinely kind of shocks you to the core a little bit. I might do a video soon talking about found footage horror movies in general, because again, I want to kind of break them away from the stigmatism that they have at the moment, because I feel like they get a bit too much of a bad rep nowadays. But this film is genuinely fantastic. After that, I then watched Ben Wheatley's newest film, In the Earth. I've been excited to watch this film since it premiered at the Sundance Film Festival back in January, and I've got to admit, I was not a massive fan of this one. Now, take into account, I really like Ben Wheatley as a filmmaker. I think he's made some great films in the past, like High Rise and Free Fire. I think are two brilliant films that he's made. Sightseers is another one. But this film really just didn't work for me. I understand that it was written, filmed, and edited all last year throughout, the pandemic, and that they worked around the different lockdowns that happened in the UK to get it done. And I do applaud them for that, but unfortunately, it kind of shows in the film because everything feels a bit sloppy, a bit messy, and a bit rushed, especially the first act, which is so choppily edited that it's actually kind of distracting. Um, on top of that, the third act of this film, if you were to pitch it to me, I should love it. But unfortunately, I don't, purely because one, it feels a little bit lackluster, and two, it doesn't have the impact I was expecting it to have, purely because Ben Wheatley has already done this sort of thing before in A Field in England. Now, I don't love A Field in England, but I like it enough to appreciate it, especially from a filmmaking standpoint, and especially considering how low budget that film is. And when you look at the structure of that film and how the third act of that film plays out with its psychedelic and trippy visuals, and you watch In the Earth, it just feels like it is copying it beat for beat, and it doesn't feel nearly as impressive as when it happens in A Field in England. I think with A Field in England, I think half of the reason the psychedelic imagery works in that film is because one, you've had this quite compelling story and these compelling characters, and it's built up to that moment. So when it does happen, it almost feels like just the cherry on top of the cake. On top of the fact, the period setting and the black and white cinematography kind of add to that atmosphere of that film as well. Whereas here, it just feels like it's lumped in there just because they can do it, and it just feels like they want to do it because oh, it'll be cool. Um, and it's not. That's not my biggest gripe with the film. There's a number of things that I didn't like about this film. However, after that, I was thankfully able to cleanse the palate by watching Denis Villeneuve's long-awaited adaptation of Dune. This film is incredible. This is one of the best films I've seen in an awfully long time. I was genuinely blown away by literally everything in this film, and very rarely do I leave a film and I am genuinely speechless. Like 9 out of 10 times, I will leave a film from the cinema and will instantly want to start talking about it, especially if it's a good one. But this film just blew me away in almost every aspect that I genuinely didn't know what to say. I couldn't comprehend a coherent sentence after seeing this film. Everything about this film is so immaculately well done. The score, the cinematography, the sound design, the performances, the way it tells this story is all just so well done. Um, I really don't know what to say about this film other than the fact that I absolutely loved it. Denis Villeneuve, I feel like, is the only filmmaker that could have really done this story justice. I've never read the book, and I've never seen the David Lynch adaptation of Dune from 1984. Um, but considering how well established the original book is and how highly regarded it is, I feel like this adaptation of Dune will be the definitive one for years to come. And finally, the last film that I watched in October, funnily enough, I did actually watch this on Halloween, was Censor, which I'd heard a lot of really good things about over the course of the year. So the fact that I was finally able to watch it, I was really excited about. And overall, I really like this film. I don't think it's great, and I think there are a couple of things in the film holding it back from being truly an amazing horror film. But for the most part, I really appreciated the craft that is on show, and especially considering that this is a directorial debut, I think it is a very impressive one. My favourite aspect of this film, without a doubt, is the visuals and the ideas and themes that it has on show. And when the film commits to those, it is at its best. Especially in the third act, where it pretty much just delves headfirst into both of those aspects in a very surreal manner. I absolutely adore the third act because it kind of feels like the film just stopped giving a shit and just kind of went for it, and I loved it for that. But everything else beforehand feels like it doesn't commit as much as it wants to some of those specific aspects. And I feel like the thing that could fix that is by maybe having the film be slightly longer, because the film is only an hour and a half. And there are moments leading up to that third act that feel like it kind of just rushes through stuff a little bit, which is fine, but I feel like if it had given certain moments the time to linger and breathe a little bit more, especially in regards to the ideas and themes that it's trying to get across, and if it let them breathe and just sink in a bit more, then it would have made certain events leading towards the third act kind of a bit more rewarding. So guys, that was everything that I watched in October. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked the video, then give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and let me know your thoughts on some of these films in the comments below. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.